the second episode of Light at the Beggar's Tomb. Now I know I might as well not pity-pat around the old wired fence. I might as well just stumble right into it with the shock of it all and say, I know you're all disappointed. You might be disappointed, you might just be flat out furious that this one coming during Jerry Week, or right at the tail end of Jerry Week, is not a Jerry Garcia focused video. But I'm not leaving Jerry out of the celebration. Y'all gotta remember one thing. This is about life at the Beggar's Tomb. We're not here to celebrate the day that our dearly beloved's part of this world. We're here to celebrate the fact of what we still have of them with us here. Okay? That being said, allow me to bring on the guest of the hour, the man of the week, Mr. Jerry Garcia, babies and girls. So now, let me tell y'all, let me say to this, Jerry, now that I got you here with me, can I please ask you, for the sake of all the listening audience, are you upset with me that I set the first episode with Hunter? Now, before you answer, Jerry, let me say, you are the man that pulled me into this scene. You are the guy. You are the heart and the spirit. It was your music that called me. It was your voice that sounded to me. And you are the man that brought me in. Now, that being said, in order for me to tell the story of the Beggar's Tomb, I started with Robert Hunter, and Jerry knows disrespect because it was really the songwriting you and him did together that brought me into this. So, I don't know, Jerry, what do you got to say about that, buddy?
I'm not prolific by any means. Hunter's output compared to mine is like, I'd say about 50 to 1. He's like so prolific. But Hunter and I have a wonderful working relationship, so it's always a happy experience writing with him, and that's usually I don't write unless I write with him.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you. And I hope that made everybody out there feel a lot better about all this. In this episode number 2, we are going to focus on Mr. Neal Leon Cassady. And Jerry, you said at one point that there would not have been a Grateful Dead had there not been a Neal Cassady. What can you say about Neal Cassady, Jerry?
Cassady, I don't know. It's hard to even know what to say about Cassady. He was so singular. He had an incredible mind that he would do this thing. He did it to everybody. Everybody has reported on this. You might not see him for months, and he would pick up exactly where he left off the last time he saw you. Like in the middle of a sentence, he would pick up and you first of all, you go, what the hell? And then you realize, oh, yeah, this is that story he was telling me last time.
Yes, Jerry, I understand that. No, that is truly to be respected. This Beggar's Tomb thing, in the way I've described it in the definition of the Beggar's Tomb, it's a collective of artists from the second half of the 20th century. Is there a way that you could describe Neal Cassady in terms of being an artist? Is he an artist? I guess
he was the first person I met who he himself was the art. You know what I mean? He was an artist, and he was the art also. And he was doing it consciously as well. So he did things. He worked with the world.
That being said, Jerry, most people have categories for art. And the self as art does not typically fit a normal category. Could you break it down in a way that we could put this man into standard categories as an artist?
Well, for one thing, he was like the best, the ultimate sight gag person, you know what I mean? Physical comedy person, He was also the world's best stand-up comic, too.
So Neal, we got a picture of Neal as a comedic guy. A comedic artist. Is there a way that you could Can you give us an example of Neal's comedic art put in motion in the real world?
I remember one time after a party, well, after the Watts acid test, which was particularly strange, we went over to Wavy Gravy's house, which was down in like, off of Western, way the hell off somewhere funny in Los Angeles. And they had a little house, and we had the bus there, and a bunch of us are sitting on the lawn, and we're all kind of crunched from being up all night, stoned on acid. It's like the dawn. It's Sunday morning now. It's Sunday morning early, and here's Neal, and he's ripped his shirt off. He has no shirt on now, and now he's no shirt, no shoes, and these funky old chinos he always have. They're always like just about to fall off. First of all, George Walker is driving the bus, so George is driving the bus, and Neal is like the guy directing him into the parking place. A little to the left, a little to the right. He's doing all with signals, and he directs him right into a stop sign, an arterial stop sign, and knocks it. It shears it off. Boom! And the stop sign falls down. So then Neal gets up. Then the bus is parked, but Neal gets up and he's got the stop sign, and he's like kind of trying to make it stand up, And so he's there with this stop sign, and down the street come like two really straight little old ladies, and they're on their way to church Sunday morning, And here's Neal. He's like the cosmic village drunk, you know what I mean? He's like, and he's got the stop sign, they're trying not to see him, and he's doing this whole series of kind of like, good morning, ma'am, kind of pantomime, this extravagant thing all the time he would kind of like stand up the stop sign and then walk away from it and it'd start to fall and he'd grab it just as I'm about to hit, and all this stuff happening. It was like amazingly great. It was just beautiful, perfect timing, and it's just extraordinarily beautiful, and the way his body moved, the way he looked and everything like that was just absolutely, his face is so expressive. He would go through millions of expressions, just millions of them. Just his whole body language and everything was so communicative. It was just amazing. It was, I was dying. I thought I was going to die. It was so hilarious. And it was absolutely perfect. It was like a little silent movie, a silent ballet. But it was perfect. It was like a perfect moment. It was just great.
I think beyond our knowledge of Neal as an artist, is it a myth? Or, you would know. You knew the man. We got the concept of Neal as maybe being a magic man. Is there anything to that? Can you give us an example of Neal in terms of magic? Is that real, or is that make?
He used to do this thing that was this was something that killed me, and I saw him do it a lot of times. He'd take a dollar bill, from anybody, and take a dollar bill, and he'd put his hand on it like this, and he'd say the numbers, the serial number, and I saw him get it right like 2 or 3 times, the serial numbers. You know what I mean? He just had this.
Any other examples of Neal's magic? Maybe his magic put in motion?
And his driving. Yeah, if you go for a drive with him, it was like the ultimate fear experience. That you knew you were going to die, and there was no question about it, and it was something so unbelievable. And he like driving in San Francisco, he would go down those hills, like 50 miles and 60 miles an hour, and do corners, blind corners going down those hills. If you can imagine, like going down Franklin, like top speed, you know what I mean? Disregarding anything, stop signs, signals, all the time talking to you, and maybe fumbling around with a little teeny rote, and also tuning the radio maybe, and also talking to whoever else is in the car, and never seeming to ever put his eyes on the road ever, And this is like, you'd be just dying, you'd be dying, and it would effectively take you past that whole fear of death thing, It's like a difficult experience because there's nothing else like it, apart from almost like surviving an airplane crash.
Very good, Jerry. What more could anybody ask for an affirmation of Neal? But you got this knowledge. You got Neal Cassady as a comedian. You got Neal Cassady as a magician. And you got Neal Cassady as a man that puts magic in motion. I mean, that's your race car driving right there. We got all these things put into one man. Why didn't the man make it big? Why is he not a household name?
Scared a lot of people. A lot of people thought he was crazy. You know, a lot of people were afraid of him, and most people I know didn't understand him at all.
Most artists, Jerry, an artist finds his community. Did Neal ever find a community? Was there anybody who he personally fit in with that you can think of?
He liked musicians. He always liked to hang out with musicians. That's why he sort of picked up on us and me, and we hung out together a lot. And he liked the company of musicians.
Jerry, is it true that Neal Cassady spent time at the 710 Haight-Ashbury house with the Grateful Dead, and he was actually part of that household?
Yeah, he was. Off and on. He stayed up in our attic when we were in 710. He had a little camp up there, you know, with a mattress, and his old Cheetos, his old jeans and stuff like that were up there. And he would come in and hang out for a week or so every month or so, you know, every couple of months maybe, you know, he'd come in and, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jerry Garcia. Your thoughts and inputs are welcome beyond belief. You're everything too. There's none of this. Hey, like you said about Neal, it wouldn't have been without you, Jerry, and everybody out there. We all know this would be nothing without Mr. Jerry Garcia. He is the man. He like Yankee Stadium is a house that Ruth built. Beggar's tomb and base, that's the tomb that Jerry built. So we got that all out there. Hey, listen to that whistle blow, and it is time for me to get to the point of the matter. Yes, indeed. In the hour of the matter, and the man of the hour, and all that to be said is, we're going to talk about Mr. Neal Leon Cassady. But, this is the beginning of his tale, and the beginning of his tale comes from his book. In his own words, the first third. Now, the first third, and especially the beginning part of the first third, isn't really about Neal Leon Cassady. So as you hear Neal Cassady throughout this, it's mainly about his father. A man who I think gets, I say the man gets a bad rap. I don't think he gets dealt with fairly, even though it is by his own son. But we must understand, and not to cut down Neal Leon in any way whatsoever, but it was written before he passed away, and it was written in from what would have to be termed a rather young man's point of view. Okay? So, all I can say is keep a clear and open mind as you hear the story of Neal Sr.'s life. Now, I say Neal Sr., but Neal wasn't a junior, and you'll hear this a couple times during the video. Neal Leon Cassady as opposed to Neal Cassady Sr. So anytime you hear Neal Cassady spoken without the Leon, especially in this first part, you will know that you are hearing about Neal Leon Cassady's father. Okay? And Neal Leon Cassady's father's life was a magnificent American life. And that's what you're going to hear about, and you're going to hear about it from his son. Now, there are parts of what makes this a Neal Leon Cassady, someone who was from the Beggar's Tomb plot story. Well, it all comes from the writings of Neal Leon Cassady, the son writing about his father. And there are parts where I read directly from the text that are written straight in the book, the first third. Those texts are in human voice. The rest of it's in this all mechanical, it's kind of really sucks. I hate it. I hate it. But it's written, it's told in that robotic voice, that computer-generated voice. But listen, before you dismiss, bring it to your ears, let them transmit it into your knowledge, because later, once all this is dug up, once these relics are dug up out of the Beggar's Tomb, there'll be plenty of time to put great production value into this and bring in the best narrators and all that. Okay? But right here, right now, you got the raw gem, kiddies. Welcome to it. Neal Leon Cassady, Part 1. Roll it.
This is the story of Neal Leon Cassady, born in 1926. But our story begins with his father. Also named Neal Cassady but had no middle name. Therefore technically Neal Leon Cassady is not a junior to Neal Cassady Sr. Neal Leon took time and care in writing about his father's life leading up to his own birth. And most of the information presented in part 1 of this video comes directly from the essay that Neal Leon wrote himself. William and Cora Cassady were the grandparents of Neal Leon and the parents of his father Neal Sr. Cora was originally married to William's brother Ned until a fatal fight between Ned and William took place in the barn of Ned's family farm. The two men fought with pitchforks and Ned was killed. It is believed that Cora was pregnant with a child from William already at the time of the fight. Ned was known to be a harsh man with a bad temper, so William was acquitted of all charges. He married Cora and assumed the role as the head of the Cassady household.
Cora had one child at the time of the killing and the second was born a matter of months later. Cora gave birth to 3 more children before giving birth to her 6th child Neal, in 1893. Cora died from complications giving birth to Neal. After Cora's death, William became withdrawn and few people visited the farm. Neal was closest with his big sister Eva, who was nearest to him in age, and she nurtured him. In 1907 Eva married a man named George Simpson and moved to his home place of Unionville, Missouri. Neal's big brother, Roy, was the only one to receive a college education, and he returned home and became the local school teacher. Roy was a strict teacher and was especially hard on his little brother Neal.
Neal reached full growth at the age of 16 in 1909. He was 5'8", 160 pounds, and he retained these dimensions throughout his life. He was known as an excellent runner and was remarkably strong for his size. Neal got into an argument at school with his brother Roy and fled his hometown forever on May 25, 1909. He went off to find his sister in Unionville. There he discovered that his sister and her husband George lived with his parents, and the Simpson family was very poor. They barely had enough food to eat as it was, so Neal's arrival was not greeted with enthusiasm. Neal was eager to work hard to earn his keep, so eager that he injured his back shoveling manure out of a wagon and required a visit from the doctor. Feeling bad about costing the Simpson family this expense, he returned to work too soon and caused permanent damage to his back. Nonetheless, he worked through the summer and the harvest season, but it was a weak harvest all the same.
After the harvest, Neal arose from the dinner table to announce that he would be leaving, and not even his sister Eva protested this announcement. Neal decided that he would move to the big city, the closest big city being Des Moines, Iowa. Neal hitched his way north to Des Moines and arrived there at an opportune time and quickly gained employment at a stockyard which had just received a large herd of cattle. Neal worked feeding and watering the herd throughout the fall and winter into the spring. Neal stayed at a 25-room boarding house called Ken's Gables. It was owned by a large woman named Ann, who inherited the home from her father Kenneth Stubbins, who had built it. Ann never married, and the Gables was her primary concern. Her and Neal became close, and Neal called her mother Ann.
Work ran out at the stockyards in the spring, but by this time he had saved much of his earnings. So he took to a life of ease for a period and walked to the downtown city park each day and became a bench sitter at the age of 17. He slept in late each day and treated himself to a large breakfast before taking his seat in the park. It was there on that downtown park bench that an elderly man sat down beside him by the name of Rolf Swartz. Rolf Swartz had no family and was becoming more enfeebled each day. He sought for an heir to his 3-seat barber shop, and with these considerations in mind he began to converse with Neal. They were instantly compatible, and before the day had ended Neal agreed to be taught the trade of barber by this old-world German. He moved his belongings from Ken's Gables to the back room of the barber shop but promised to visit Anne each Sunday.
In his prologue for his autobiography, The First Third, Neal Leon Cassady writes,
With feverish delight, Swartz pushed the training period, and although a lifetime of strain at the barber's chair had weakened his eyes to the point of near blindness, he still retained a deft touch. With masterful intensity he taught Neal, and the boy responded with equally serious eagerness. With eyes watering more than usual, Swartz embraced the youth, called him son, and told him that he was now more skilled than even he himself.
Wowie quacka zowie, babies and kitties. We've already reached the end of episode 2. Hey, time goes fast, what can I say? And now don't you all be mad at Mr. Jerry Garcia for getting a little bit long-winded. It was his birthday after all, y'all, just a week ago. Be easy on the Jerry man. So, you got your good starting point for your next lift off here. Going on towards Neal Leon Cassady, because Neal Sr., he just learned how to cut hair, kiddies. That's a profession. Let's see where that takes him, boys and girlsies. Out of here. Later.
Everybody take their swine flu shot? Did you say it before? Who said that? Did you take it? You did take it, bitch, but you felt the pressure of everybody going, you dumb bitch, so you lied. Like we all do. See the pressure, you took that shit under pressure, and now you're saying you didn't under pressure. But I know you're a little nervous, right? You're not a little nervous. Are you sure? So you really took it, so you lied twice. Yeah, that shit's crazy. Don't take that shit because they tell you to. You're trying to kill us. You're trying to get us to fucking swine flu. It is. But why'd you take it? You did fucking take it, liar. You took a fucking swine flu shot. Fucking slave. You just went, here's all the fucking shit. They throw that shit in eggs. And you Google that shit? I Google swine flu. You know what these fucking symptoms are? The regular flu. And there's some people who take regular flu shots. You retarded? What the fuck is wrong with you? It makes you sick.